reports. Authorities are charging Vance Belter, a 57-year-old, after a 2-day manhunt. In federal court Monday, Belter said he couldn't afford a private attorney for the 6 federal charges he faces.
But the details of Belter's crime.
You're a great host. You did a fantastic job. Thank you. In Canada, but you probably see what I see, and I have to be back as soon as I can.
In response to the conflict that is now entering its 6th day, the president wrote this on Truth Social. He said, quote, "Iran should have signed the deal I told them to sign. What a shame and waste of human life. Simply stated, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. I said it over and over again. Everyone should immediately evacuate Tehran."
We're not looking for a ceasefire. I didn't say I was looking for a ceasefire. That was Emmanuel. Nice guy. But he doesn't get it right too often. But we're not looking, we're looking for better than a ceasefire.
What specifically is better than a ceasefire? What are you looking for here?
An end. A real end, not a ceasefire. An end.
So something that will be permanent.
Or giving up entirely.
And before he left, Trump and UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer held a bilateral meeting where the president also reiterated his stance on Iran.
I want to see no nuclear weapon in Iran, and we're well on our way to making sure that happens. I think Iran basically is at the negotiating table where they want to make a deal. And as soon as I leave here, we're going to be doing something.
More specifically on U.S.-UK relations, some big news on the trade deal. President Trump and Prime Minister Starmer say that they have signed a document finalizing the trade deal that the two parties had agreed to a month ago. Listen.
We just signed a document.
A very important document. This now implements on car tariffs and aerospace. Our really important agreement.
The president also met with the leaders of France, Germany, Canada, Japan, and the EU commissioner during his stay in Canada. His early departure meant he missed a bilateral meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Reporting from Calgary, Fiona G, NTD News.
Canada and the U.S. say they're aiming to finalize a new economic and security deal within 30 days, but major differences still remain. The announcement came during the G7 summit, as we just saw in Alberta, where Prime Minister Carney met with Trump to discuss trade tensions and border security. Carney
defend American personnel and American interests.
Late on Monday, Israel said it hit Iran's broadcasting authority. Footage showed a newsreader hurrying from her seat as a blast struck. Iranian state television said the strike killed 3 people. The foreign ministers of several Arab and Muslim countries have condemned Israel's attacks.
Casualties. In fact, more Americans were killed in 2 days at the Battle of Shiloh than all of the previous American wars combined. The Battle of Antietam was only 1 day long, but it left more than 12,000 Union soldiers killed, missing, or wounded. Which, oh, by the way, is higher than the typical estimates of Allied casualties on D-Day. There were 23,000 casualties overall. It was the bloodiest single day of the Civil War. At Cold Harbor, Virginia, 7,000 men fell in 20 minutes. The Battle of Stones River, right here amongst us, more than 23,000 casualties. The reports said that Stones River was pink with the blood of those who'd fallen. The Second Battle of Manassas, more than 22,000. Vicksburg, 19,000. More than 620,000 casualties in the Civil War. If we include the killed, the wounded, and those captured or missing, more than 1 million. I think it's awkward and incredibly tone-deaf to reflect on our history and then try to assert that there's nothing worth giving your life for. It exposes the degree to which selfishness has almost totally captivated our hearts and our lives. We should live with something in mind beyond our own self-satisfaction. I understand we have an assignment for self-preservation. I'm not diminishing that. But I'm telling you, there's other things to be considered.
Got another pothole out here, folks. Nice deep one.
Success since our nation's founding. NTD's Arlene Richards has some highlights.
President Donald Trump last month established the Religious Liberty Commission to reignite religious freedom in America. On Monday, the commission, which serves under the Department of Justice, held its first hearing. Attorney General Pam Bondi applauded the commission for taking on the president's vision.
That faith was built into the foundation of our nation's founding documents. There was no mistake when it was included in the First Amendment. Our founding fathers understood that every individual must be free to worship without fear, without coercion, and without government interference.
In his executive order that established the commission, Trump said one of the commission's duties would be to recommend steps to secure domestic religious liberty by executive or legislative actions. Distinguished guests presented at the hearing on various topics like the right way to promote religion.
Is it possible for the government to promote religion without infringing upon the rights of others?
Former law professor Gerard Bailey drew upon the writings of founder James Madison for his answer.
We should come to recognize religion as a common good, even if not everybody's religious. And even if some people, maybe they're not religious, don't think religion is a common good. And as the founders most certainly did think, and I think, having a religious and virtuous citizenry is good for everybody. Frankly, even people who lack virtue and don't believe in religion.
Several other witnesses spoke on the founders' vision for religious freedom, the intended meaning of the Establishment Clause of the Constitution, and the court's responsibility to make changes. The commission is chaired by Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick and former Secretary of Housing Dr. Ben Carson. It also has 3 advisory boards composed of religious leaders, legal experts, and lay leaders. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
That is all we have for you tonight on the Capitol Report. For round-the-clock original coverage, visit us at ntd.com/live and download the NTD mobile app.
On Truth Social, saying everyone should immediately evacuate Tehran. Trump, aboard Air Force One, was asked why he told residents to evacuate.
I just want people to be safe.
On the same day, Israel's defense minister, Israel Katz, said they were planning to soon strike very significant targets in Tehran. And he gave a warning to Iran's supreme leader while standing near the impact site where an Iranian missile hit.
If you continue to commit acts of war and launch missiles at the civilian population in Israel, your fate will be exactly like that of the dictator in the neighboring country to Iran, whose end is well known.
On the same day, Israel reported killing Iran's top military commander, Ali Shadmani, and he only held the position as wartime chief of staff for a few days. As Israel Defense Forces spokesman gave an update on the war.
We have delivered significant blows to the Iranian regime, and as such, they have been pushed back into central Iran. They are now focusing their efforts on conducting missile fire from the area of Isfahan. We are aiming at military targets. They are attacking civilian homes.
Israel's foreign minister also blamed Iran for targeting civilians as he visited the site of impact of an Iranian missile as well. Meanwhile, the spokesman for Iran's defense ministry appeared to be undeterred in an interview on Tuesday, and he said that Israel will be defeated. And while residents in Tehran have been evacuating,
Keep
some
thinking
residents
that, pal.
in Israel have decided to go to the beach in the midst of war.
For me, it's very relaxing to be around the sea, and I know my whereabouts. If I need to go into shelter, I can go under that bridge, or I can go to my car and go back up to in the mountain.
So,
for President of the United States, and we are going to make our country great again. I'll bring back our jobs from China, from Mexico, from Japan, from so many places. I'll bring back our jobs and I'll bring back our money.
First of all, can I just remark, he has aged very well over 10 years. He's been shot. He's run for the presidency 3 times and hard campaigns 3 times. He's done thousands of interviews. He's been all around the planet. He's done state visits in Asia and the Middle East, back and forth and back and forth. mean, this guy looks great. He just celebrated his 79th birthday on Saturday. And you look at that announcement video, he is one of the few people in politics that quite honestly doesn't age into a decrepit old ball after being around for 4 years. And there's something real special there about President Donald Trump. The journey that he started on that day 10 years ago today was the birth of many things and also the death of many things. It was the death of the Republican consultant class driving our politics. It was the death of political norms as we know it. He replaced the kind of idea of scripted platitudes with raw, unapologetic populism. It was also the birth of the new right. Now, at times, we took some detours. There were some speed bumps. There was some ups and there were some downs. But make no mistake, what President Trump said back 10 years ago, you would not know that if what President Trump was announcing for the presidency or if he was just giving another campaign rally today. Listen to this. It's indistinguishable. The consistency politically is remarkable. Usually when people enter politics, they get new beliefs or they'll change and all this. President Donald Trump has been remarkably consistent. Just moments ago, President Donald Trump was with Carney, the new Prime Minister of Canada, the G7 summit. And he says, I'm a tariff guy. I've long been a tariff guy. It's time that we're no longer the dumping ground. Oh, really? I wonder when he first said this. Play cut 227.
Our country is in serious trouble. We don't have victories anymore. We used to have victories, but we don't have them. When was the last time anybody saw us beating, let's say, China in a trade deal? When do we beat Mexico at the border? They're laughing at us, at our stupidity. And now they're beating us economically. They are not our friend, believe me. But they're killing us economically. The U.S. has become a dumping ground for everybody else's problems.
We would stand for big immigration, mass immigration, pro-choice, abortion. Remember, the consultant class and the ruling class, they wanted Jeb Bush to be president. It was supposed to be Jeb Bush versus Hillary Clinton. Wow, what a dramatic choice that is. They'll agree on everything, but they'll disagree on school choice and tax cuts. What a decision for America. Donald Trump rejected that paradigm and he created a completely new one. The era of mass migration is over. The era of mass invasion is over. President Trump was the first Republican candidate to criticize the entrenched bureaucracy, Department of Justice, Internal Revenue Service, otherwise known as the deep state. And look at all the different chapters we've been through, from 10 years ago going down that golden escalator, to the shock victory versus Hillary Clinton, to Russiagate, to James Comey, to him being spied on, to the 2020 election, to COVID, to exile. Donald Trump plots his comeback, to the indictments facing 700 years in federal prison, to picking J.D. Vance as vice president, to getting shot in the ear, nearly dying, to almost getting shot again, defeating Kamala Harris after they switched the candidate in a popular vote victory and an electoral vote landslide. To now it leads all the way back to today. And you look, it is without a doubt, for all of you that have always had President Trump's back these last 10 years, for all of you that have never wavered, for all of you that have stood firm, for all of you that have continued to donate and pray and knock on doors and get friends out, you are part of, without a doubt, the most breathtaking political journey in American history. Nothing comes close. Nothing. From a businessman that people watched on TV, from You're Fired on The Apprentice, to Trump Wine, to Trump University, to all the different labeling, whether they're controversial or mainline or mainstream, it doesn't matter. From Trump Airlines to him trying to start his own football program, the football league, to the Art of the Deal, to him going on Oprah. We thought we knew Donald Trump, and he remade the American body politic. And dare I say, he's being used as a vessel to save Western civilization. From being loved by liberals to hated by liberals. But 10 years later, we can say he did not just run, he rewrote the rules, and you played a major role.
And it turned out that Iran is now taking over Iraq.
He was very worried about Iranian expansion throughout the Middle East, and he was right about all of that. You see, where we are today, by the way, just to be clear, Donald Trump got rid of ISIS. He unshackled the military. ISIS destroyed something he does not get credit for. He was solving the problems of neoconservatives' past. He was remedying the problems of George W. Bush. And that's a very important philosophical baseline for what we're now seeing between Israel and Iran. And we're going to go into all of it. We're going to go through the best possible outcomes and the worst possible outcomes, and maybe some of the outcomes right in the middle. Between regime change, is that a good thing? Should we celebrate that? Should we cheer for that? Between full-out victory for Israel, what does that even mean? What is the goal here? We're going to examine that all throughout the next couple of hours. But the baseline for all of that, we must never forget, is the way we are even viewing these issues, the way that we are...
Say something, because we all are in a fight, and it's not going to end. Evil will.
Sure, Ronald. I'm not ignorant to the fact that war is not going to continue on. That people are not going to incite violence. That's not going to be a regular occurrence. Now, targeted violence, I think we can call out. We've seen a lot of that happen over the last 20 years. Hate speech changed a lot. Rules changed a lot because of it. So I don't think, I think you're right. I mean, we can biblically look at this and say, sure, this isn't going to end anytime soon. However, that doesn't mean we don't fight for the injustice that's happening. We don't fight for those who are in need. And they're coming for us now. Okay, so now you can't just, you'd say, okay, well, we're not surprised. I'm pretty surprised when in cold blood people are shot down in Washington, D.C., because they are associated with the state of Israel, which, by the way, Republicans and Democrats both have been pretty bipartisan supporting until the last few years. It's never been a real controversial topic until recently. I'm pretty shocked when it then happens in Boulder, Colorado. It's not about violence. It's not about political violence. Sure, we've seen that from Vietnam and everything, that there was always this happening. But that doesn't mean you don't try to get better. We don't look back at those things and go, well, that's just part of America. You look back at it with disgust. The problem you have here is that the people who I've been talking to aren't looking at it with disgust. They can't see the forest through the trees. All they see is Israel bad, and they've been fed multiple lies, even over the last couple of weeks. Multiple lies that have said this is what's happening, even as of the day before this attack, saying that there was an open fire emergency at the Israeli, the U.S.-controlled humanitarian relief center, that there was hundreds of people or 40 people that were murdered, Palestinians that were murdered by IDF soldiers. And then CNN quickly had to take that all back and go, well, we actually don't know if it was IDF. And now Mike Huckabee, ambassador to Israel, put out a statement saying, we've actually reviewed everything. Nothing happened. Not just that this was first they thought it was the IDF. For some reason, they thought the IDF opened fire on random people, but that's not how they operate. Second part was, oh, well, maybe it wasn't the IDF. Maybe it was Hamas doing it themselves. Then the third one, they find out now the answer is nothing actually occurred. No fire was exchanged. No one was murdered. And of course, that doesn't change the headlines. That doesn't just stop the violence that was incited. Same thing happened, Will, the day before, a couple weeks ago, when that couple was murdered, because there was also false information being sent about this.
That's right. And to the caller's point, we are surprised because it's disheartening that this is where we're at in the United States. But in some ways, we're not surprised because this is what we've been warning about for years. Because we saw since October 7th, we warned after 2 weeks, if you get that grace period where Israel, in the eyes of the world, had just had this horrific attack, and there was some empathy for the people of Israel, and we said, but just watch, it'll quickly change. And then it did. And then we warned from that day forward, this is a growing cancer that is going to manifest everywhere, because the anti-Semitism that was boiling out of this was unbelievable. And then we started seeing what was happening on the college campuses, and we saw how the Biden administration was playing word games with the Israelis, only to further bolster the claims of the people that were calling for intifada, that were echoing Hamas's claims.
What was the comment that
and we
was
said
like
this would happen?
the comment that they asked during that hearing that was like, are attacking Jewish students considered hate speech on your campus? Like, well, it depends.
It depends on the context. Yeah,
Depends
we'll
on
pull
the
that up. That was
context.
Claudine Gay from Harvard.
That started so much of this, that kind of rhetoric. And look, and the problem is you also see this sort of bot control from social media where you see so much. If you post anything pro-Israel, you're going to get thousands of comments a lot of times from people. I don't believe most of those are real people. You had Tom York from Radiohead. He came out this week and just said, hey, I don't like Netanyahu. I don't like the Israeli government right now. I don't like what they're doing. But you know what? And we've just filed a motion also at the International Criminal Court to file a brief defending Israel. We got to take urgent action right now. Help defend Israel. Help defeat anti-Semitism. We can do it. We can all get together and do this. It may not come with 100%. As our caller said, he said, you're not going to stop this until Jesus comes back. And sure, that doesn't mean we can't try. It doesn't mean we have to just say, you throw your hands up in the air and go, well, we're just going to wait it out. No, that's not what Christians do. That's not what people who care about human rights do. And we got to remember that these are human beings all around the world that are dealing with this. And we are called to help and support them. When I send you a story about Americans that are being burned alive in the streets of Boulder, Colorado, your response should just be, that is horrendous. I can't believe this is happening. Not, well, they associated with the Israeli government, and that's why. Because you've conflated even your own Judaism and your own background with Israel, because you say that you support Israel. Therefore, these are the lies, these are the conversations that are happening. And then you have it also, again, like I said, not just coming from your hard left, not coming just from your left wing. I mean, look, I know people that did not vote certain ways. They voted Democrat because they thought it was too pro-Israel this last time around. But a lot of people are spreading this hatred, and you're not calling it out because they're voices that you, for some reason, have decided to live and die by. And it's okay to listen to people and to hear other points of view. But when it starts infiltrating people's minds, we have a very different story on our hands.
Well, and we're also seeing that in the American media and European media and global media. But right before the two diplomats were murdered in D.C., there was a story that came out in many global outlets, BBC, some American outlets as well, echoed it, that there would be, I believe it was 14,000 children would die in the next 48 hours in Gaza. It was an unbelievable claim. And then it was debunked. But that inflamed so much more online commentary and in social media about how bad the Jews are and Israel is. And then what did you see? You saw that violence and in D.C. And then this weekend, CNN, the Associated Press, New York Times, many other outlets took from Hamas's media and their Ministry of Health a story that, and this was the original CNN headline, at least 26 Palestinians were killed after Israeli forces opened fire near a Gaza aid distribution center, the Palestinian Red Crescent Society said. Then they had to update their story.
Just a couple hours later.
And said, update, at least 31 Palestinians were killed amid chaotic scenes near an aid site run by a U.S.-backed private foundation in Gaza, according to the Palestinian Ministry of Health. Hamas. CNN cannot independently verify who was responsible for the deaths. The health ministry blamed the Israeli military. The IDF denied firing on civilians, calling such accusations false reports. Here's the truth. This is from Ambassador Huckabee, because the world was looking at this. And what happened after this, just a day after all these reports came out of what was a barbaric report that potentially Israel just started indiscriminately shooting at civilians trying to get humanitarian aid. You saw this in Boulder, Colorado. You saw firebombing. You saw a flamethrower. You saw intifada in America. What do we find out today? This is from Ambassador Huckabee in an official release. This talking about the reckless and irresponsible reporting by major U.S. news outlets are contributing to the anti-Semitic climate that has resulted in the murder of 2 young people at an Israeli embassy event in Washington, D.C., and the attempted murder and terror attack on a group of pro-Israel demonstrators in Colorado on Sunday. Without verification of any source other than Hamas and its collaborators, New York Times, CNN, and AP reported that a number of people seeking to receive humanitarian food boxes from the Gaza Humanitarian Fund were shot or killed by the IDF. These reports are false. Drone video and first-hand accounts clearly show that there were no injuries, no fatalities, no shooting, no chaos. It is Hamas that continues to terrorize and intimidate the people that seek food aid. Nothing happened.
You could have done fine. You would have had a country. It's very sad to watch this. I mean, I've never said anything like it. It's so, everyone thought it was going to be the reverse. I didn't think so. And I was telling them, you gotta do something. You gotta negotiate. And at the end, last minute, they said, no, we're not going to do that, and they got hit. Remember 60 days, and then came the 61 is going to be.
He has communicated very clearly for quite some time.
I do understand that, Mr. Secretary, but my question for you is whether you have been asked actively to provide options for the president regarding a strike in the Middle East.
If I had or I had not, I wouldn't disclose that in this forum, Senator. My job, our job, Chairman and I, at all times, is to make sure the president has options and is informed of what those options might be and what the ramifications of those options.
Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth also dispelled Democratic senators' impression that changes in the hierarchy of the Pentagon are affecting the combat readiness of the Department of Defense.
Sir, I would just say the media loves sensational headlines that are not connected at all to reality. If you look at the execution of our office and what we've done on the president's priorities, I'm very proud of what we've been able to do in 140 days. And when you move fast to reestablish deterrence and restore a warrior ethos and rebuild the military, it's going to come with some changes.
Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, who is not in the Appropriations Committee, demanded this Wednesday that senators have a private briefing on the situation in Iran. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
The Federal Peace Research Institute released on Monday. The report says China's nuclear arsenal is growing faster than any other country's, adding about 100 warheads a year since 2023. This rapid buildup has pushed Beijing's stockpile to at least 600 warheads by early 2025 and is expected to keep growing. Globally, there are roughly 12,000 nuclear warheads, with the U.S. and Russia controlling about 90% of them. While China's stockpile is still smaller, the speed of its expansion is raising alarms. Another major concern is that the New START treaty between the U.S. and Russia is set to expire in early 2026. It's the last remaining nuclear arms agreement between major nuclear powers. Signed in 2010, the treaty limits how many nuclear warheads the U.S. and Russia can deploy. But with no replacement in sight, experts fear both countries could increase their nuclear forces once the deal expires. And with advances in AI and cyber warfare, a new nuclear arms race could be far more dangerous than ever before. Early this year, President Trump said any future arms control deal should also include China's nuclear arsenal. It's a stance he's been pushing for since his first term in 2019. Now we turn to China's ties with another nuclear power, Iran. Israel's surprise military campaign against Iran has reshaped the Middle East. What began with an airstrike on June 13th has expanded into a full-scale operation targeting Iran's nuclear and missile programs. Meanwhile, the relationship between the Chinese Communist Party and Iran is drawing fresh scrutiny. An Israel Defense Forces spokesperson told Fox News that the U.S. and its citizens face a pivotal moment, one that could decide whether Iran is permanently eliminated as a nuclear threat. Here's more.
Remember, Iran is the pit bull of China. China is funding Iran. They want a nuclear Iran so that Iran can continue supplying them with oil, which is all of Iranian oil goes to China. And as soon as Iran gets a bomb, God forbid, they can threaten the entire Gulf that they have to supply electricity and oil to China and Russia.
Billman says the opportunity to completely shut down Iran's nuclear program won't come again. Israel claims it has severely damaged some of Iran's nuclear facilities, but not the Fordow fuel enrichment plant, where much of Iran's uranium enrichment takes place. Uranium enrichment is a key process in producing fuel for nuclear reactors. Israel says it would need bunker-busting bombs from the U.S. to destroy the plant. The nuclear bunker is built deeply into a mountain. A Chinese-linked cargo flight is raising eyebrows in airspace before disappearing from public radar over Turkmenistan. That's according to flight tracking app Flight Radar 24. Let's take a closer look.
The move fueling speculation about whether China is quietly flying supplies or equipment to Iran as part of a secret support route. The flight made a stop in Turkmenistan before reaching Europe. Cargo Lux is partly owned by a Chinese firm. It denies the plane ever entered Iranian airspace, blaming faulty public tracking data. The incident comes amid escalating tensions with Israel targeting Iranian military and nuclear sites and Iran firing missiles in return. Analysts warn of growing China-Iran coordination as part of a broader anti-Western alliance.
And inside Iran, the Iranian CCP regime promised hundreds of billions of dollars in trade and investment some years ago and has not lived up to that. And the Iranian government itself has called the Beijing out on this matter. Beijing has no real authority in this dispute. The Russian government, on the other hand, is very close to the clerics and could offer some alternatives. And it's probable, in fact, that some of the clerical government's personnel and families have already
Tim Walsh is a
left
communist.
Russia. So if you're counting on someone, I would count on the Russians to be an influence on the outcome of this conflict. However, they are trying to preserve their